They say that imitation is the highest form of flattery, and so in today's video, I always wondered how about maybe 2 years ago, AWS came up with this pretty spiffy feature that allows you to, from the console or the GUI, the management, to go in and click this VPC and more, and you can visually see the representation of what they can automatically create by just basically providing a few inputs to these prompts. For example, if you wanted 2 public subnets and 4 private subnets, you can visually see they're going to put 3 in this availability zone and 3 here, etc. And you can play around with these parameters, and once you hit create VPC, each of these resources will be created. And so been working with Python, of course, over the past few months, really the last year, and thought of, can we do a low down, dirty, simple way of something similar to this, at least for a few of the resources. And so we went ahead and we put together this script. Took a while really to get some of these features, but gonna quickly go over some of the highlights here today, try to explain this and probably upload this to GitHub in case anyone out there wants to take a gander. But really from a high level, what we have is a script that's going to import a few of these built-in libraries. As you can see here, the IP address, we're going to need to use that to basically work with the IP addresses and provide some of the functions to create and manipulate these network CIDRs and IP addresses we kind of see here right below it. And then we need this math library. And if we scroll down a bit, we see some of these features here. Basically, we're going to be playing with functions such as logarithms and then this ceiling to basically perform rounding. But without further ado, let's go ahead and break this down or decompose it just a little bit. We see that this function here is going to take 2 arguments. The VPC underscore CIDR is really the CIDR block that we're going to provide to basically build that CIDR range for the VPC. And then we're going to be prompted, or the user is going to be prompted, for how many subnets do they want to create. And the next few lines are really where it took me a while to get this just right. But we're going to start from right to left and try to explain this a little bit better. So these required bits, really, when working with subnetting, we know that, so we'll use a /24 to basically make it easier to explain this. So let's just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dot, and we'll use a little bit more space here. But again, we know that these first 24 bits here, these 24 bits are representative of the network ID there, and then the remaining 8 are really used for the host. And so these lines of codes, really, we need these identify how many extra sub bits that we need basically on this side to accommodate or to create those subnets. And so the way that we're going to do that, and generally with subnetting, we're borrowing some of the bits and these to create those needed subnets. And so if we take a look again at the code, it's a bit easier to understand it here. We got the number of subnets, and then we have, of course, with our base 2, we're using this logarithmic. This is why we imported that math library, and we need to come up with how many, again, the goal is how many extra bits do we need. And so if we put a 2 here, then we know that 2 to the first power is going to equal 2. So it's going to equal this value here. If we do the same thing and we put a 4 here, then of course 2 to the what power will give us 4. Then we know that's 2 to the second power, or basically 2 times 2, and we can keep going. Again, if we use log to create 8 subnets, that's 2 to the third. Again, that's going to be 2 times 2 times 2. And so What happens if someone, when they're prompted for how many subnets do you want, they pick an odd number like 5 or 7? Well, that's where, again, that ceiling function is going to come in. We're basically going to round up. And so we need, of course, to basically achieve a whole number or an integer in that variable in our function to store there. And so if we were to do like, I don't have a calculator here, but like say someone wanted the log of 5, and I think that value is 3.1 or 3.2. Again, I don't know, 3.3. I don't know. I have the calculator. But again, this won't sit pretty with creating 3.2 subnets. So we're basically using this here to round up to 4. And so we're always going to have an integer value there. And so like we said, when we get here shortly into the code, we'll use the /27 or 24. We'll identify that, and we'll pick 5 or 7 to see the ceiling feature do that as well. But if we needed 3 extra bits here, which is going to, of course, take us from our original 24 prefix to those 3 extra subnets, the number of subnets that we needed, then this is really the value that we're coming up with, is what /27, what are we trying to make those additional subnets? And so that's going to be basically 8 subnets that are all /27. You know, again, if we would have picked /26 or 2 extra hosts, 24 plus 2, that value there, then we're going to have 4 /26s. So that's really these next few lines of code. Maybe not simple, but the easiest way that I can think to visually represent that. So hopefully that helps a little bit out there. But like I said, this was the tougher part to really get to. And so again, that's the toughest part there. And so this is really just outputting the number of subnets that are going to be created based off the math above. And then the rest of this, or most of it really, is basically doing or presenting the Terraform. We're going to basically, everything here in these stanza is really to create the VPC, that resource itself. We see the resource block there. And in AWS, the only true requirement is the CIDR block, but we're going to go ahead and give these additional options as well. And then the last component is a for loop to iterate through, again, using the math that's above. This is going to loop through and create those subnet resources based off of those, depending on the number of subnets that you enter, based off of that CIDR notation there. And then this is going to be printed out and displayed as well, and then written to this VPC and subnets.tf file there. And then, of course, we hope to not get any value errors there. And then we go right into running our code. So let's go ahead and I think we made any changes. We'll press Control S. Let's go ahead and run this. So the user is prompted for basically the VPC CIDR, that resource again that's going to get built. We'll just say 10.100.0.0. Let's do, again, to keep it easy, a /24. And let's, again, using our example, what if we wanted 5 to, again, see the ceiling function being performed? And if we hit enter, this is the print functions that are going to basically loop through, starting with the VPC CIDR, and as we noted, it's going to tell you the number of subnets that it's divided into, and then the CIDR for each of those. And so basically the last 3 in real life, these would be like considered reserved subnets to be used at a later time. And we can see that it's printing out each of these. And we need to tweak this. This is dirty code. We got a few things that we see we can improve. Because in AWS, the usable range, there's some reserved IPs in there for the DNS, of course, the gateway, etc. So we'll go back and tweak that code. But this, again, is the output there. And then we see our Terraform file here. Again, this is low and dirty too. We can probably prompt the user for what region they want. And then we got comments here because depending on, especially internationally, which availabilities, which region you're in, all of those availability zones may or may not be available. But we can take advantage of the data mechanism and Terraform to basically query or probe each of those. So we'll do that in a future code enhancement as well. But again, this is going to be that code that's written. So let's go ahead and exit out of here. We were waiting. We got lazy and pressed the play button twice. But let's go ahead and do a Terraform init. And we'll wait for it to pull down any updates to these plugins here on the back end from the providers. So it did originally take a while to pull those down. So we did it prior to this. And so reusing the same ones was a little bit quicker. Now let's run our Terraform plan to basically get a map of the resources that would be created. And again, in thinking about this logically, we can expect 9 resources. Right above here, you see the 8 subnets. But of course, first off, gonna need that VPC to be created before those subnets can be created. So those are going to be the 9 resources that we can expect to see mapped out here in the plan here shortly. All right, and as expected, there's the 9. And of course, we know anything with an ID is going to be known after we hit the apply as well. So things look good here as we expected. Again, logically thinking this through. So we won't do the auto approve, but let's do Terraform apply. And again, we're going to be asked, are we sure? And we'll, of course, here shortly type yes. But before we hit yes, let's get back on in here. So that we can visually see this created. We'll cancel out of here. And then, of course, there's currently no VPCs there. But once we type yes, we'll wait to see these resources being created. There we go. And so we'll hop back in here. We'll do refresh here and live time. There's the 10.100.0, basically the CIDR. Ooh, that's too much. Let's say I'll zoom in. And then, of course, the subnets. These type of resources don't take very long to be created. And it's sorted by the IPv4 CIDR here. Well, really the name, but because they're tied or associated numerically, we see that they're in ascending order. So honestly, that's what we got here, is really taking a problem or identifying something in the real world that actually works right now and seeing, can you mimic it via code? Sometimes that's a way to really improve or help you understand your learning or what you're doing a little bit better. And this, again, is no way a replication of what AWS does, but just at its simplest elements to the logical construct of it, it kind of is just like it. It's taking user input. What's the VPC CIDR? They, of course, have menu buttons visually there that you can click on. But behind the scenes, the same thing, taking user input and how many subnets would you like to be created. And like I said, in a future video or in the background, we're going to work to improve this. Maybe prompt or ask for a prefix for the naming instead of just subnet_1. Maybe there's an alias or something that we can prepend to that. And as we noted, other different ways to improve it, asking or prompting a user for the AWS region to write that into the Terraform code. But so many different ways to skin this cat. But like I said, the biggest takeaway is just to continue to be a little bit creative and think outside the box. And sometimes, like I said, if you get stuck in your learning, just think of something real world and how you can code that in a practical use. And the sky is truly, truly, truly the limit. But I want to thank each and every one of you again out there for rocking in here with your boy early this morning. And for everyone out in California, please, hearts and prayers go out to you and your families through this tragedy, and just praying praying for strength, recovery, and safety first out there. But thanks again, and until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves. Peace.